From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Welcome all of you to the African Middle East Division. I'm delighted to see you. I'm Mary Jane Deeb, Chief of this division, which is made up of 3 sections: the African section, the Near East section, and the Hebraic section, each of which organizes programs, conferences, exhibits related to its collections and its region of responsibility and expertise, provides reference, takes photographs, and actually helps researchers with the many resources that we hold here at the library. This year, the division decided to start a new series entitled Highlights from the Collections of the African and Middle Eastern Division. Our expert librarians, who are also scholars in their own rights, make presentations on aspects of the collections. We have already had Dr. Ann Brenner, who talked about the 16th century Hebrew book, Dr. Levon Avdoyan, who discussed the Armenian collections, Dr. Angel Baptiste and Ms. Marita Harper, who talked about the library's resources on the new Republic of South Sudan. And today we will have Mr. Abdulahi Ahmed, who will talk about the Somali collections at the library, but more about him later. In its mission statement, the Library of Congress includes the following, and I'm quoting: "In the 19th century, when the Congress placed the national copyright function within the library, it set the collections on a course to becoming the record of American creativity and a storehouse of the world's knowledge. With these actions, the Congress enabled the library to serve a critical public need, the advancement of knowledge and creativity. Since then," and I was quoting, all this was a long quote, "since then, the library has continued to fulfill its mission, building its collections and making them available to everyone. What Congress may not have realized when it set the library on a course to becoming the storehouse of the world's knowledge was that it would also become the preserver of the world's memory. In the past 200 years, there have been numerous natural and man-made disasters that have resulted in the destruction of libraries and archives around the world. Had the Library of Congress not held copies of many of the collections that were destroyed in their home countries, the losses would have been irreversible, and the history and creativity of many of the people of the world would have simply disappeared. A case in point is Somalia. When its civil war started in 1991, the first institutions to suffer were the universities, the museums, the libraries, the archives, the bookstores, the theaters, all those institutions that held the history and creativity of Somalis. Today, nothing is left. The art and culture scene in Somalia is gone. Some of the artists were able to flee to Europe and the United States. Others were not so fortunate and became refugees in neighboring countries, while still others perished as a result of the armed conflict. In September 2011, Abdulahi Ahmed, a staff member of the African Middle East Division, who hails from Somalia, and Mohammed Sheikh Hassan, the CEO of Scansum Publishers, published together a book entitled The History of Somali Plays and Art. The book highlights the contributions of several hundred people who were songwriters, playwrights, musicians, poets, composers, folklore dancers, stage directors, group bands, and many others in Somalia, and is based on resources which exist nowhere else but at the Library of Congress. Today, the library holds the largest collection of Somali publications in the world. Now, let me say a few words about the speaker, Abdulahi Ahmed. Abdulahi Ahmed is one of our cherished members here in the division. He holds a BA in History and Geography and then an MA in International Commerce and Policy from George Mason University. He took a year study abroad and traveled across the world. He went to the Institute of Economics of Beijing. He attended classes at the Institute of International Economics in Geneva, and he went to Oxford University as well in the process of studying. And currently, we have the great fortune of having him here as part of our division. And he has not only helped every single member of this division, but he has been and continues to be asked for assistance, support. He gives briefings on the Somali language, and many of the students of Somali language are here today. We're delighted to have them, so welcome to here. And he has not only written the book that I've just mentioned, but he's working on a second book on folk dances of Somalia, which should appear in 2013. He has a hobby, and he's a former soccer player who was part of the Kismayo port team of Somalia, the national team of Somalia. He loves soccer, and he mentors young Somali soccer players. And every year, he disappears to Canada, to other parts of the world, and comes back triumphant, having won a cup for the teams. So without further ado, Abdulahi Ahmed.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Thanks for everybody for coming. I want to acknowledge one thing, that this year Somalia is celebrating the anniversary of the 40th year of writing the Somali script itself. Somalia celebrates the 40th anniversary of the written Somali. The Somali language is one of the ancient Cushitic languages spoken mostly in the Horn of Africa, but it has remained unwritten until as recently as 1972, when Somalia finally managed to have its own written language, thanks to the ruling government of that time. Somali has its tradition deeply rooted in oral expressions. It's interesting to note that written Somali is very new, and that the development of the written language has a complex, integrated history that goes back hundreds of years. In the early 1970s, a commission was formed by the Somali government to establish a written script. While several scripts were actually presented, in October 1972, the Somali government decided that the Roman script would be used for the written language. The decision brought to an end the alphabet wars over which script to use, because some people wanted Arabic as well. Since Somalis are Muslims, they said we want Arabic. But finally, the government decided the Latin script. In January 1973, the first Somali language daily newspaper, Xiddigta October, was launched to replace the English and Italian newspapers. As a result, Somali now has an official language called Somali. Because Somali is such a very new language, it has a wide variety of words that have been borrowed from other languages, especially such areas as technology, communication, and religion. So, Somali became the official language for administration, mass media, and as medium of instruction in schools and colleges. The former Somali Language Commission and Subcommittee spearheaded efforts to translate and standardize administration and media vocabulary, communication, and education to translate primary and secondary school subjects into Somali, paving the way for a mass literacy campaign in 1974 and 1975. Although national institutions promoting Somali language ceased to exist because of the civil war, the pace of translating books from and into Somalia has not been severely affected by the civil war, thanks to determination of Somali language researchers and policies in favor of cultural diversity in the Western world, like in Europe and the United States and in Canada. A lot of Somali books are being published, mostly bilingual. So, what did we get from the written Somali language? Today, in refugee camps, in the diaspora, in Somalia, from mobile texting to writing books, from newspapers to TV channels, and from websites to school textbooks, from audio broadcasts to missing person letters, perhaps it's the written language which has played a vital role in alleviating 20 plus years of the Somali civil war. Now I want to show you some slides of the Somali collection that we have at the Library of Congress. The Somali collection consists of monograms, which are books, newspapers, my favorite, periodicals, official government and international documents, including legislative and parliamentary documents, statistics reports, policy and administration documents. We also have films, video, and sound recordings, manuscripts, maps and atlases, microforms, print and photographs, which you will see today. And now I'll start showing you some of the highlights. I'll start with the culture of Somalia, some of the books that we have here. Okay, mine is off. Okay, the first few slides are it's about the culture and the language. The first one that you see here is a book written by Muhammad Diri Abdulahi. He's a native of Somalia and he lives in Canada. He's a professor of a university. This book gives students and interested readers an in-depth look of the land and the people of Somalia. This Muslim country has strong post-nomadic roots, and it's known as land of poets, with a long oral cultural tradition. Some highlights found here in this book discuss religion and thought, art, architecture, nomadic way of life, camel, Somalis love their camels, culture, food, dress, marriage and family, gender roles, social customs and lifestyles, education, music, and dance. This is the book that was mentioned earlier. The authors are myself and a friend of mine, Muhammad Sheikh Hassan. It covers over 70 well-known plays that were staged, directed, and presented to the public in theaters dating as far back as the 50s. I think the rest, Mir Jane Deeb has mentioned it, and it was good. This is a collection of Somali poems. Somalis love poetry. And here are some Somali songs. Wilwal. In 2006, the Minnesota Humanities Center, in collaboration with the Minnesota Somali community, launched the Somali Bilingual Book Projects. So this is one of those books. It's bilingual. Minnesota has over 70 to 80,000 Somalis. So the goal was to ensure the community has high quality, authentic resources that promote and preserve heritage language and increase English literacy skills of refugees and immigrant families. The project culminated with the publication of 4 traditional Somali folk tales in English and Somali, as well as dual language audio. So Wilwal, that's the name of a Somali king. In Somali mythology, there is an abundance of tales about men and women who defied cultural traditions or acquired heroic and saintly status among the masses of the Somali Peninsula. And this guy is one of them. His name is Wilwal. He was a king, an ancient Somali king known for his bravery and skills in battles. The story in this book is the king said, I want someone to bring me, all men should bring me what makes men unite or divided. So when a white Somali leader, Wilwal, asked the men in his province to bring him the part of a sheep that best symbolizes what can divide men or unite them as one. Most presented him with the prime cuts of the meat. But one very poor man's daughter has a different idea. In this clever folk tale, a father, reluctant, follows his daughter's advice and has astonishing results. Most men brought the prime cuts, right? But this girl said, no, daddy, don't take that. He wants what unites and divides men, right? She said, it's the esophagus. Because men are greedy. So that's what makes men united or divided. They will fight over food, over wealth, or they can be united. So that's the story of Wilwal. And this is another book, Regal Shidal. This book, it's bilingual. Also, it's published here in the United States. It's for American teachers, English speakers, who has a lot of Somali students in their classrooms. So this book has a lot of sentences and verbs for the teacher to communicate with the Somali students and the Somali parents. Like, nice, you did your homework in Somali and in English. This is the first Somali dictionary, the oldest one that we have in the library, 1880. It was written by a captain in the military British administration in Somaliland. And it's one of the oldest ones. And this is the newest dictionary. It's 208. Advanced English and Somali Dictionary by Ahmed Hassan Mireh. Was published in 208, and it's written by Ahmed Hussein Mireh. So far, it's by far the best English Somali dictionary in the market, contemporary now. It has 1,205 pages. It's really huge, and according to the author, it has close to 150,000 entries. It also has over 30,000 examples to further illustrate the meaning of the meanings of some of the most difficult words to grasp. And now we start with Somali books. This is a textbook, Somali textbook, English and Somali. This is the latest one. Okay. Maybe Sorry. Yeah, it's here. Okay. Now, Somalis are nomadic and tribal. So, this book is about genealogies of the tribes of Somaliland. This was published by the British in 1944. They wrote down all the tribes' names and how they are related. And this is the latest one. This is one of the best books when it comes to Somali clans and tribes, how it's set up. And this book provides data on clan and sub-clan representations of the most controversial Somali government positions. It is a valuable source for Somali politicians and international observers understanding Somali clan policies. If you want to know about Somali clans, read this book. It has all the data. It has, for example, every government, every administration that came to Somalia, from the president to the DJs, they have the ministers where they came from, their names, their clan. Because Somalis divide seats in the parliament by the clan line. Okay, this one is also one of my favorites. When a Somali child is born, if the child is a boy, in the nomadic culture, the boy is either a warrior or a priest, nothing in between. And they have their own culture and their own laws. So this is traditional Somali behavior in warfare. When we say traditional, it's the nomadic. It's not the urban, because there we have different rules. This is the nomadic culture. So a boy is either a wadad, wadad is Somali, wadad means a priest, a religious person, or waranle, warrior, the one with the spear. War always had its regulating conventions and well-defined bounds which served to limit its effects, and which also set forth clearly the kind of actions that was permitted and those that were prohibited. According to a Somali proverb, every war gives way to peace. In anticipation of eventual peace, women, children, those innocently caught up in the fighting, the wounded and the captives would be protected and treated humanly during the conduct of hostility. So the topics that this book covers are causes of conflict among the Somalis, traditional conduct of the warfare, traditional immune groups. There are certain groups you cannot touch. Prison of war and private property. Conflict and Islam. Religion is important again. Treatment of the wounded. Weapons and practice prohibited in conflict. Negotiation and peace settlement. So all those topics are in this book. This is a book from the Somali military, 1965. It talks about the regulations of how the military should operate, and just like any other country. But the first one I showed you was authentically Somali. But this is from United Nations. And we have a copy of Somali police also. And this book is in Arabic, Risalat Zu'ama al-Somal ila Sheikh Sultan bin Saqr al-Qasimi. It is a manuscript. And it talks about Somali clans up in the north wanted to join this king's authority because the English and the Germans were coming to Africa and taking lands. They wanted to control the oceans and the seas. But the Somalis say that we are Muslims and we don't want to be under non-Muslims. So the title is Letters of the Somali Leaders to the Sheikh Sultan bin Saqr al-Qasimi. And this letter was written in 1837. That's when the scramble for Africa was going on. So who was this Sultan? He was the ruler of the current Emirates, United Arab Emirates, in 1803 to 1866. And he was known for being the enemy of Britain. And the Somalis saw the British as their enemies. So they wanted to be under his protection. And they wrote this letter to him. The reason that they want protection was because the English also brought missionaries. They were converting Somali kids to Christianity. They also wanted their freedom because the English will control them where to go, who to trade with, who to sign treaties with, and they paid no tax. Now the tax will come. But did the Sultan accept their request? At the end, no, because he signed a treaty with the British. This is a historical book. It's about the city of Merka. It's south of Mogadishu. 1910, it was written by the Italians because the Italians ruled it. The title is the Città di Merka, la regione di Bimal. Bimal is a Somali clan. They say the city of Merka is the region of the Bimal. So Somalis claim territories. So Bimal can claim because they have now an evidence that in 1910, even the Italians recognized that this is their territory. This is a United Nations report. We also have United Nations reports. This is the trusteeship agreement between the Somalis and the British and the Italians. This is a government publication, National Museum of Somalia. We also have yellow beads, actually not only from Somalia, but from all over the world. And this is a Somali yellow bead. We have a collection of them. And when I told my wife, she was excited, and I found their home number from Mogadishu. I said, do you remember? And here's again, you can see the names and the numbers there. And there's an advertisement, Somali banana, in English and in Somali. This is also an old book about Somali poetry. It was written by a Canadian woman who lived in Somalia in the 50s. Her husband works for the British. Okay. Give me a second. My favorite, newspapers. We also have newspapers from Somalia. But before independence and before the written Somali, everything was written in English and Italian and in Arabic. This is 1959, the Somaliland News. I can make it bigger so that you can see it. Let me go to the next one. This is the first newspaper publication by any Somali government. This is after independence. And it lasted for about 10 years. The library also has historical newspapers. I don't know if any of you have visited them, starting from 1870s to up to 1940. And out of curiosity, I went there and put Somalia in there. And a lot of stuff came out of it. So, and this is one of them. I will show you the article that I printed from this one. And this is when the Somali was written. This is in Somali, Hidikta October. It was the most famous newspaper in Somalia. It's all in Somali. And this is in the early 70s, because you can see people learned Somali through the newspapers too. So here you see the Somali alphabet here. I think this is 1973 when we first started writing Somali. And down here, it's an advertisement for a Somali play. We have this play in my book. I interviewed this lady once when she came to Columbus, Ohio. And she also was invited at the Kennedy Center here 3-4 years ago. She has her own band. She's in her 70s now, but very active. And she has a lot of energy. Her name is Marian Mursal. This is another publication from the Somali government. It was a magazine in Somali. This is a newspaper in English. You can see taxi owners should change their attitude, some of the titles that they cover. This is from the library webpage. Okay, I took the picture from that newspaper, and you can read it. This is 1903, and New York newspapers were reporting Somali war between the Somalis and the English. And you can see the title, England's savage foes on Somaliland have their own strange ways, but they are good fighters. This is 1903. Okay. Now I'll show you posters and photographs. It was the tradition of the Somali government to publish posters for information for the public or for propaganda, both. This one is celebrating Women's Day, 1981, March 8th of March, and it's Women's Day. This is public health, and we wrote, myself and a friend of mine here wrote the captions here. We translated it. Hooyo badbaadi ubadkaaga iyo caafimaadkaada. She's a pregnant mother and she's smoking. So mother, save your child and your health. Again, another poster about smoking. Health is gift and smoking is poison. That's just a beautiful picture, so I added it there. It's in one of our books. Another beautiful Somalia. This was taken by one of NASA's satellites. Another beautiful picture. Okay, this photograph, 1943 in New York. It's the window of a store, Saks Fifth Avenue. They were advertising Somali leopard skins. And they said, Somali leopards, the first boatload in 9 months. They destroyed all the leopards, I guess. This picture, this photograph is with, from the library also, and the next one. These two groups were together. This is 1915 in Chicago. And in this group picture of Somali men and boys at Clark Police Station in Chicago, Illinois, policemen and men in suit look on. So these are the police, and these are men in suit. But what were they doing in Chicago? 1915. These are the men, and these are the women and children, the same group. But what were they doing in Chicago? I was curious. I wanted to know what were they doing there? And here they are again, the same group. And it's in French. This time they're in France. It's a poster. And this is 1898, in Paris. Walking down the street and you see this poster on a wall, a Somali warrior, his wife and children, and his countrymen in the back. And that's the guy who's responsible for all these photographs, and he's behind all the story of these pictures. Here again, the same group, and there. These were traveling Somalis. In the late 1800s, in Europe, they used to have fairs and World Expo. As a sideshow, they will bring in natives from other countries. They brought Eskimos, they brought cowboys and Indians in England and in Paris and Hamburg, Germany. Somalis were brought from Somalia, and they were actors. These people were traveling around the world. and they are my next project. The first time they appeared in the newspaper, the same group that I just showed you their pictures, this is the newspapers. This newspaper is an old newspaper from England, the Graph, and I'll show you. This is kind of slow. I just want to show you the date. Well, it's actually here. August 3, 1895, right? Okay, that's when they started their first show. And they were in Chicago in 1915, what, 20, 30 years? They did this for 30 years, from 1995 up to into middle 30s. And I conclude my presentation with that. And I want to show you some of the pictures and the books that you just saw, and they are in the conference room. Thanks. And if you have questions, you can ask. Okay. Go ahead.
I have a comment and a question. The comment is that we also have recently acquired colonial Somali photos.
Okay.
That went over to print some photographs and probably are not cataloged yet, but they're available there, as well as colonial era postcards
Mhm.
that are in a box on our desk on the catalog.
Okay.
And my question is, I'm assuming the Quranic schools still use Arabic, so when people in Somalia write religious poetry, do they use Arabic script or the Roman script?
I assume they will use the Arabic.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for religious
For
purposes,
religious purpose,
they
yes.
continue to use
Yeah.
Arabic.
Although they write also in Somali, but most likely they will write in the Arabic language. Yeah. Even when they chant in the Arabic language, the religious people. Okay?
My understanding is Somali was divided by some of the British, Italy, Britain,
Mhm.
and the French is Somali is the built-in Arab, I believe so, and the British is Somaliland.
Uh-huh.
All of this region, or it is,
Mhm.
same language,
Yes, Somali is spoken all over Horn of Africa. That includes Somalia, Djibouti, parts of Ethiopia, and parts of Kenya. And also we have a huge diaspora in the Middle East and in North America now. In Canada, 150,000. Minnesota, 80,000. Around Washington area, 15,000.
you are having the same experience of the Turkish, after the Turkish Empire, when they changed the alphabet, when the Arab inspired the Romans.
I think the reason that Somalis chose the Roman script is because they already could write Italian and English, the Roman script, and that was easy for them. Because otherwise you have to change all the typewriters and books. So this was easy way to go, because most people could read already Italian and English.
The other language already are in use. If you are talking about Arabic or French.
Okay. The schools had curriculums from elementary to high school. You will learn in Arabic. You will take Arabic as a language, but you will take the classes in Somali. You will also take either English or Italian in addition to the Arabic. So by the time you leave high school, you have 3 languages. And then for college, you might go to Russia and then come back with another language. So that was very common. Somalis speak, my own family, I don't want to get into it, so many languages. But the Somalis always come. It's like Francophone. Every Somali speaks the basic Somali, the standard. Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming, and you can come over here. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.